Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Today, I would like to address the issue of conspiracy theories around the pharmaceutical industry. And in particular, is there any real basis to what they claim? The common idea behind those theories is that pharmaceutical companies work against the interests of the patients so that they can make money. They team up with politicians, research institutions, the healthcare system to rig the game in their favor at the expense of sick people. So here are some of the examples that I'm sure you've all heard. Effective treatments are being withheld from the public. That's one of the statements that's being made. Or natural alternative remedies are being suppressed without any proof of their inefficiency or harmfulness. Or people say that ineffective or harmful drugs are being released to the market. You can also hear people saying that doctors are encouraged to prescribe drugs based on their price. So instead of generic drugs, patients are always or often recommended more expensive brand names because doctors have a deal with those brands and they receive a kickback from sending customers their way. I personally don't necessarily buy into these claims, but as they say, where there is smoke, there is fire. And I can see how such conspiracy theories emerge. It's true that pharmaceutical companies collect billions of dollars in profit every year. At the same time, most of their activities are not transparent to the general public. And it's understandable. For example, various processes behind drug development, testing, manufacturing, drug approval are not easy for the general public to grasp, as we heard earlier today in another speech. It's a complicated process. There are also legal issues around patents, trade secrets, and so on. At the same time, it is also true that drugs often don't work the way they're supposed to. They may have no effect at all. They often produce side effects that require other drugs. Some drugs may cause addiction, for example, painkillers. Of course, we all know there are many drugs and therapies that improve the quality of life or even save lives, such as insulin or antiretroviral therapy. But people tend to take such success stories for granted and focus only on problems. I personally don't think there is a malicious intent on the part of the pharmaceutical companies or the pharmaceutical industry as a whole to deliberately harm patients. But I do think that the amount of profit that pharmaceutical companies generate does suggest a certain bias. After all, this is a business. And any business wants their customers to come back. If there are no sick people, they would all be put out of business. As a specific example, I would like to talk about Pfizer, the hero who saved the day. As we all know, today the company's main product is a COVID vaccine. According to an article in the Financial Times, as of December 2021, the Pfizer vaccine was the most sold drug in the world, with the volume of sales exceeding $36 billion. This is twice as high as the numbers for Moderna, its main competitor. By October 2021, Pfizer had seized 80% of the European COVID vaccine market and 74% of the American one. This same article also says that Pfizer CEO, Albert Bourla, is the most in-demand head of a large company today. At the Tokyo Olympics, he was greeted by the Japanese Prime Minister at the time. At the 2021 G7 summit, he parked his personal jet next to the British Prime Minister's liner. And President Joe Biden refers to Mr. Bourla as his good friend. Now, we could say that Pfizer did a great job. They developed a life-saving vaccine in a record low time. WHO estimates that without the vaccine, in 2021 alone, Europe would have seen at least 500,000 more COVID-related deaths. So why shouldn't the company and its CEO be rewarded accordingly? just based on the profit alone, it would be unfair to suggest that the company's actions were driven by profit and not by genuine concern for humanity. Or at least that the company should be equally concerned about both. After all, is it such a far-fetched ambition to take a living, to make a living by doing something meaningful? Isn't this something we all aspire to? But let us take a closer look. So first of all, Pfizer did not develop the vaccine. The vaccine was developed by a different company, BioNTech in Germany. Before the pandemic, this company was working on a cancer treatment based on the mRNA technology. And at the end of 2020, BioNTech decided to redirect its research and resources to develop a COVID vaccine. However, BioNTech had never developed any drugs that would be approved for sale. And plus, they didn't have enough money. And that's where Pfizer came in as a partner. And before that happened, Pfizer's main product was Viagra, of all things, which I didn't know. I thought that was interesting. But the company has an excellent business sense. From the outset, right after partnering with BioNTech, Pfizer refused to take any money from the US government. Unlike BioNTech, which received a 375 million euro grant from the German government. So as a result, Pfizer was able to retain full control over the vaccine and its prices. In the summer of 2020, the price for 2 doses was $200 US, and it was not negotiable. Later on, Pfizer was able to enhance its manufacturing capacity and scale up vaccine production to the point where other companies that produce cheaper vaccines could not compete. So Pfizer now was in a position to decide who gets the vaccine and when. That's a lot of power. Did they use this power wisely? Well, Lawrence Gostin, who is a professor of medicine at Georgetown University and director of the World Health Organization's Collaborating Center on National and Global Health Law, says, "I'm not in principle against the big pharma. I believe they've created a miracle, a scientific triumph. But to say that they use their power openly and honestly, with compassion, would be blatant lie." A senior representative of COVAX, this is a UN program for supplying vaccines to developing countries, also believes that Pfizer has abused its power. There's a huge gap between rich or developed countries and poor countries. According to that same article in the Financial Times, as of December of last year, in the G7 countries, 66% of the population were fully vaccinated, whereas in Africa, on average, only 6%. For example, in Uganda, as of November 2021, less than 3% were fully vaccinated. In rich countries, there were almost twice as many booster doses available than there were first and second doses in poor countries. Western leaders call Mr. Bourla directly, while leaders of other countries can get through. For example, when representatives of the African Union try to contact Pfizer, no one talked to them. Pfizer doesn't reveal its list of orders, so there is no transparency, no way to verify when orders come in and by what principles these orders are registered and processed. Pfizer even refused to deliver vaccines that have been already paid for if storage conditions were not met, according to Pfizer inspectors. The Bureau of Investigative Journalism, based in the UK, found out that Pfizer was trying to force some Latin American governments to put up their sovereign assets, such as government buildings or military bases, as an indemnity against civil claims in case of an adverse reaction to the vaccine. Pfizer also demanded that the governments cover any legal costs that may result from Pfizer's own acts of negligence or fraud. The governments felt like they were being held to ransom, and as a result, Argentina and Brazil never signed a deal with Pfizer. But apparently, himself insists that the bottom line is not all he's interested in. He says that even more than the financial indicators, he enjoys the feeling when he's out for lunch somewhere and the entire restaurant rises to applaud him because he saved the world. Now, remember, this is spoken by someone who used to sell Viagra. No comment. That's for you to connect the dots. Now, Pfizer is just one example, is just one big pharmaceutical company. But if any of this is true, perhaps the so-called conspiracy theories about the pharmaceutical industry should be taken more seriously. There may be at least some truth to what they're saying. And before I let you go, I'd like to point out something else. Governments and healthcare authorities all over the world have been aggressively promoting vaccination as the only protection from COVID-19, which is fine. It does save lives, and it is the best tool to resolve the crisis. But nobody ever talks about other ways to protect your health. For example, I've never heard Dr. Tam in Canada or Dr. Fauci in the US promoting the use of vitamin D. Yet it has been shown that the lack of this vitamin makes people especially vulnerable to COVID-19. And most people, especially in northern countries, show dangerously low levels of vitamin D. Not only do doctors not talk about this, but to get your levels of vitamin D checked in Canada, you have to pay $40. It is not included in your standard blood test. So should we call this a conspiracy between the pharmaceutical industry, health authorities, and politicians? Or is this just a cultural bias? What do you think? Thank you.